Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Star Insight. I wanted to definitely immediately come back with another topic to discuss. The last thing I discussed in my last episode was on how spiritual teachers and leaders, you kind of got to be careful with how you sometimes I'm not saying you got to be careful with your content, but, when you uphold yourself and you speak about oneness, you have to just be careful that you really are expressing oneness. Oneness is truly to, experience different perspectives, and you start to learn and realize that everyone, no matter how perfect or imperfect or how good or bad or how evil or how wicked, how dangerous, how good, how positive, no matter what, everything is everything, and it is necessary, and it helps us to get right back to love unconditionally, which is the Creator's expression, unconditional love. Everything else is part of our own karmic I would say what you do comes back to you, or what you put out comes back to you. Anything that we are going through, it happened in a past life, and it is happening to us, and to learn in this life to do better, to experience maybe some of the things we did to other people. So, getting to this topic, which is, I'm going to title "The Dangers of Oppressing LGBTQ plus Children and Youth." I'll just say children and youth. And I know I'm not going to disclude any other child either, because right off the bat, I'm going to start to say that many children, of all experience, they go through a different type of oppression. They go through abuse. They go through verbal abuse. They go to mental abuse. They go through not being able to really figure out who they are, because maybe a parent in their life wants them to live the life that they wanted them to live, or maybe this parent really doesn't care about them at all, and they just take all their frustrations out on the child, or they want them to be what they want them to be. So there's different levels of this. I'm not discluding any other child out, but the reason why I'm doing this is because based off of my perspective, my experience, and so that I can be a voice to those other LGBTQ plus children that will hear this or need to hear this. And we need a voice for the people. But I will be honest, as much as people do not want to hear this, I'm talking about people they feel that LGBTQ plus people, we constantly are trying to force you to listen to us. And it's nothing like that. You have to remember that we are an oppressed people that have had our very nature beat out of us, murdered, rights not being, civil. We've had to literally, our former fathers, drag queens, mothers, whomever, literally had to fight for us to just walk down the street with our significant other and hold hands, to even be in a place where we mingled and mated, and even for us to have our own personal business. I would say we created our own world so that we can have be ourselves. It's hard to almost explain. It's sad to have to even explain that. I'm sorry that I got a little tripped up there, but it was really so that we can just live our life without being arrested for it, beat for it, murdered for it. So even just to have our own personal fucking sex life. I'll just be honest. We had to fight for equality for all of that. And it's continuously happening. But, I want to stay on topic because I have plenty of, episodes and moments with you to talk deeper on subjects like this, and of course still do my research on these topics. So I just want to start off saying that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ plus youth from the ages of 13 to 24 consider suicide each year. 1.8 million. That means that each year a child or youth from the ages of 13 to 24 are already considering suicide. And they are already considering their life not even mattering already. LGBTQ youth are not inherently prone to suicide risk because of their sexual orientation. And this is where people get really confused at thinking that it's all about our sexual orientation, and that's why we don't want to live, or we don't want to be part of a religious institution, or we just want to separate ourselves. No, it is because already we are being treated unfairly or made fun of even. The real cause of all of this is because of being mistreated and stigmatized in society. This is what really is bringing the suicide rate up. Suicide is the second leading cause of death amongst young people. This is including all younger people from the ages of 10 to 24 years old. And lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, queer, and other members of our community are at a significantly increased rate. That means the numbers are constantly going up, which tells me that people are still constantly mistreating, bullying, and showing a lot of hate to these children. And of course, in the home, abuse, force of being something that they don't want. They want you to be quiet. They don't want you to be yourself. And I think that's one of the most evil and wicked things you can do to anybody. So with that being said, that tells me that even within our homes, see, this is where it really begins at with children in the home. The number one thing that these children deserve and these youth deserve is unconditional love, nurture, and understanding, understanding, and overstanding. Right? Because what really happens is a lot of times, because parents are not educated, nor do they want to educate themselves on LGBTQ plus knowledge, or come around people and really listen in, like even going to a group meeting with LGBTQ plus people to hear their experiences, to hear their lives. And I'm talking about the parents who suspect that their children are gay, lesbian, bisexual. Let's just start there, because unless a child is telling you that they don't, that they feel that they are trans, you don't know that part yet. Unless you are a parent who, in your heart, already felt like I was supposed to have a girl or a boy. So I feel that I already felt that, but still, like, you still start off thinking like, okay, my child is, my daughter may be a lesbian, my son may be gay or bisexual, or my daughter may be bisexual, or whatever have you. So if you start off thinking that already, you can't really question the child, because they're not going to feel comfortable right away anyway, because, that's just not easy at that age, to start talking and discussing. But if you are instantly starting to pump fear in the child with your words, especially religious words, just for fear tactic, just for the sake of being politically correct and controlling the child, then that child is already going to start to be like scared of you, and they're not going to want to discuss it with you. They're not going to be comfortable. What I loved about today's youth is, there are therapists and counselors that really can talk to them more on that subject, and there is a lot of support, more even than when I was younger, and I do love that. And I do see a lot more children being able to embrace themselves and to be themselves today. But there are still an equal amount of children that are sitting at home, really depressed already at the ages of 10 and 11 and beyond, because that is the age when the consciousness is developing and you're coming into your wisdom, really. And that is the age where ancestral wisdom is supposed to be starting to be passed down to the child, woman or male child. And that is a tender age, where you really have to start speaking to the child. They're already curious about life. They're starting to want to know more about their culture. They want to know more about history. They want to know more. So their consciousness is constantly expanding and growing and evolving already. So when they're ready to embrace themselves consciously, and they're either being beat, mistreated, bullied, which they become oppressed. They become depressed from being oppressed, you see. And I thank God for my grandmother. When I was a kid and my parents were just going through life, let's just keep it there. I won't get too candid on my parents, but what I can say was that in a world with a bunch of chaos, she was like that beacon of light. She was so tender and so warming and so loving, no matter what any of us were going through. When we went to our grandmother, she came to you with such a soft, beautiful, wise nature, advice and wisdom, and no matter what you asked her or needed to talk to her about, she would give you her, wisdom, her love, her heart. She put her love into it. And that would keep me, in such a place of clarity and peace, because I had my grandmother. And I think, the infinite source for my grandmother, because she was the person throughout my entire life that I always had, that place of love and warmth and comfort. I went to my grandmother, right after, my family started to know that I was gay. And I remember her asking me, because she said she heard about it, and she said, are you sure that's, who you are? And, I said, yeah. And I remember she looked at me, she smiled with her beautiful gold teeth. She had such a beautiful smile. And it would just light your heart up. It would just warm your heart. It would just warm you all the way, like you felt it. And she said, well, you know what? That's okay. And she smiled. And I think I just hugged her and gave her a kiss. I think that's how I responded to it. And that in itself, when I tell you that helped me, don't get me wrong, I will discuss in another podcast episode of my, how my mother and I, when I pretty much faced the fear of telling her I was gay. I will discuss that in another episode. But yeah, so that kind of love, being around a child who is already dealing with that, is necessary, because the parents are not going to understand that. And my mom definitely wasn't ready to accept that at such a young age. The real test here, with not just children, amongst people, the real test here is learning unconditional love, right? And this is why I say this, it has to start young. When you are, not really embracing yourself, you've been oppressed in some sort of way, especially in the Black community. We are already coming out of being an oppressed people, and we have gay children and bisexual children or whatever as well. So, how do we, remember ourselves? And how do we, remember that at one point this was nothing new, that we had mastered the sacred masculine and the divine feminine, and knew that sometimes it expressed itself physically and spiritually? How do we remember that? How do we return to that?